Welcome, everyone. Simon Rosenberg from Hopium Chronicles. This is our 2 to 3 time a month gathering with our paid subscribers here. This is our last gathering of the year of 2024. It's hard to believe, but we are here. Happy holidays all to all of you. I hope it's a restful and joyful time, full of time with family and friends, as we all need here, I think, now to be in community. When I went out to Phoenix a few weeks ago with Tom Bonnier to speak to the state chairs, I saw a lot of old friends and hung out and drank beers, and it felt good. It felt good to be with people. Sometime in this world that we're in, we're not always as connected as we used to be, and so I hope all of you get to hang out. My two of my kids are home already for the holidays, and so we're going to have a happy time here at Shea Rosenberg, and so thank you. So good luck, everyone, and best wishes for a great holiday. Three things I want to get to tonight. One is thank you. Second is let's talk about them, and then third, let's talk about us. Number one, thank you. Just look, this was an experiment that we started in March of 2023. I really built it just for the 2024 election. I think that we're going to keep going, and because our work isn't done. Defeating MAGA, which was job number one of the Hopium community, is not finished, and we have work to do, obviously. And I just want to just reflect upon, even though we did not have the election we all wanted to have, this community put a lot of points on the board for the Democratic Party and for this pro-democracy movement that we're part of. I mean, we started our work in Wisconsin helping out Ben Wickler win that Supreme Court race back in the spring of 2023. Turned out to be a really critical victory for us this cycle. And then we went on to help win in the Jacksonville mayor's race, which was a race that nobody thought we were going to win. And that we went in there early and raised money and helped. I even put a staffer on the campaign because I felt like getting a win in Florida, in the biggest city in Florida, would really matter. We were, our community in its early days rallied. Then many of you went to go work in the two Ohio ballot initiatives in 2023, where we successfully were able to strip away the abortion ban in Ohio and restore reproductive freedom to the women of Ohio. We had many of you worked in other smaller races that happened during the cycle. And then in the general election, we played a major role in 2023 in flipping the state assembly in Virginia, keeping the state Senate, even though Youngkin had poured in unprecedented amounts of money. It was another kind of big boost to us. Virginia has today, in part because of our work, the first African-American speaker in its 400-year legislative history. We had really important wins in 2023 following the big wins that we had in 2022, the unexpected wins that we had in 2022. 2023 was a really good year for our politics, as 2022 was. We then started off by flipping a state legislative seat, Tom Keene down in Florida and Orlando, and then we were very heavily involved in the Tom Suozzi race in New York 3, where we flipped a House seat in February. People thought that was going to be a close election. We ended up winning by, I forget now, 7 or 8 points. And then in this general election, which was obviously disappointing for us, we had some really big wins as a community, right? We were the largest investor in North Carolina, which is arguably, the biggest success story that we had in this election, where we were able to win 5 statewide races and keep a Supreme Court seat that's still being contested, and break the hammer of their veto-proof majority in the legislature. We had huge wins in North Carolina, down ballot wins. Our next biggest project was Ruben Gallego in Arizona, where we were the largest fundraiser for Ruben. And Ruben, in a very tough year in Arizona, prevailed and kept that Senate seat for us in Arizona. We were the biggest investor in Nebraska, where we kept the blue dot of the 8 battleground states. That was the only one that we won. I'm counting that as one of the 8. And as you heard from Jane Klebb this week, we had other important gains. We've doubled the number of Democratic elected officials in Nebraska over the last decade that Jane has been chair. Incredible progress we've made. Really proud of that. We also, played a modest role in Wisconsin. I'm not going to go too far in that, but we did do some late money for Ben Wickler and the state legislative campaigns, specifically targeted to the state legislative campaigns in Wisconsin. And we picked up 14 seats, 10 in the Assembly, 4 in the Senate in Wisconsin after the FAIR maps were adopted there. Very impressive gains. And in the House, we played a major role. I mean, of the 8 seats that we flipped this cycle from red to blue, the Hopium community made major investments together in 7 of them. And we played a major role in our success in the House races this time. And of course, all of you, tens of thousands of you, volunteered. You wrote postcards, you made phone calls, you canvassed, you infoward, as I call it, right? You were engaged in fighting for your democracy. I mean, because that's really at the core of what Hopium is about, right? Is that we're doers here. We're not, we're like the quiet car of the Democratic Party, right? We just go to work and do the work. And all of you went to work and you worked your asses off and left it all on the playing field. And we've also built a wonderful community together where we learn from each other, we share information and stories and insights. I wish the chat on Substack was a little bit more robust and interesting. It's very kind of primitive. I'm going to be pushing them on that a little bit in the new year. But I've loved the community that we've built and the thousands and thousands of notes I got from all of you after the election. The fact that, Anderson Clayton kept telling me, I'm at an event in North Carolina and somebody comes up to me and says, I'm here because of opium, and the great event we did in Los Angeles with our friends at Grassroots Democrats HQ, where I got to meet hundreds and hundreds of you at that event just a few weeks ago. I hope to be able to do more in-person events in the new year and travel a bit more. It was hard for me to produce Hopium every day and travel during this last year. So, I just want to, first of all, as we go into the holidays, say thank you for all that you all did to fight for your democracy. We left it all on the playing field. I feel like we did our part. We all wish it went better. And by the way, we raised $1.5 million for the Biden-Harris campaign too, in addition to everything else, which given how much money they raised, wasn't that much. But for us, small community, that was a lot of money. So we did probably close to $8 million altogether this cycle in our very first cycle together. And also many of you are leaders of organizations and institutions in the family that have impact way beyond Hopium. And, we're going to keep going. And because obviously our work isn't done, but I just want to reflect upon our time together to say thank you for what you've done to fight for your democracy, for our future, our freedoms, for our kids, but also for building this and deeply rewarding community that we have together. I feel very connected to all of you, and I, get up every day and I have this incredible obligation I feel to do my best for all of you every day. And I've enjoyed this far more than I ever thought I would. I mean, this has been really a great experience for me personally, very rewarding. I feel like I'm leaving it all on the playing field every day. And I just want to thank all of you paid subscribers for funding this and giving me the opportunity to do this work. And so thank you. Second is them. Here we are. Chaos is here already. We didn't have to wait to January 20th. We all knew this was going to happen here at Hopium. We have been very steely-eyed. I want to pull up my little thing I wrote the other day. We've been very steely-eyed about what they meant, and which is why we work so hard, because we understood. And while some people have accused us of being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed here a little bit in rose-colored glasses, there was no confusion in this community about the dangers that Donald Trump and MAGA represented. And it's one of my central takeaways from this election that one of the reasons this election was not like 2018 and 2020 and 2022 and 2023, and why the presidential was not like some of these down ballot races where we won, or like what happened in Europe and in France and in the UK, where the right wing lost, is that we won all these other races. And I think that what we did in those elections is we made their extremism and the danger and the fear and opposition to MAGA the central issue in the election. And we failed to do that this time. And I think it's the central reason that we didn't have the election we all wanted. And we're going to be debating this probably till we all die about what really happened in this election, how surprising it was. But we know that Donald Trump's approval rating just grew and grew and grew, and that he essentially was rehabilitated over the last few years because we didn't adequately rough him up. And we had more to rough him up with than any set of campaigns have ever had. And I think that there was a sort of collective failure in the family to do what we needed to do to make it impossible for him to win, to define the race early. You know, the Cook report, when it did its big analysis of why we did so much better in the Senate than we did in the House, it said because Democrats used their cash advantage to define their opponents early. This is what you do in every campaign. This is the goal of every campaign. In 1996, Bill Clinton, got reelected by over 8%. Our best showing in a presidential election in terms of a margin, not in terms of the actual raw vote, but the margin of victory since 1964 was Bill Clinton's reelection in 1996. And in that election, we defined Bob Dole not in 1996, but in 1995. We ran negative ads against him in the fall of 1995, and we hurt him and, in essence, disqualified him. And so it was successful. We didn't do that this time. And I think we paid a price for it. But what's happening now, and this is what I always believed, is that somehow what happened with Dobbs in 2022, or what happened with COVID and Trump's extraordinary mismanagement, or in 2020, or their effort to take away the ACA in 2017 and 2018, which really cemented in the public's mind who Donald Trump was and what he was trying to do. The question would be is, would Trump do things to evoke this kind of fear and opposition of MAGA, in his presidency in a way that didn't come out during the campaign, to start pushing him further and further away from the electorate quickly, right? Weakening his hold on the presidency quickly, because he's certainly given the public enough reasons to be fearful of his presidency and what it means. I mean, I wrote the other day on Blue Sky that, yeah, Trump is literally going to impose tariffs, raise prices, anger our allies, weaken the US-led global system that's made us so prosperous. He's going to turn the US intelligence community over to Russia and China. He's going to remake the FBI into an interior ministry. He's going to unravel basic public health systems in the United States and undermine vaccines. He's going to deport workers in a time when the US is at near full employment, where we're desperate for workers. It's all madness, right? And this is what he has said he's going to do. And I think today the market started to wake up, with the Fed's announcement that they were going to cut just by a quarter point, and that next year they were sort of pulling back on their commitment to aggressive rate cuts because inflation wasn't defeated. And in part, inflation's psychological, right? Trump's proposing to raise inflation. This is his actual economic program, right? His claim that he was going to lower prices is surprisingly a lie. And then, in fact, the policies that he's proposing, that he claims he's going to implement in January, are going to raise prices. And we started seeing the market price that in today. And where now we've had 10 consecutive days of decline in the Dow, the first time that's happened in many, many years. And this is Trump's fault. I mean, I know Joe Biden is president, but what the market is responding to is what Trump is proposing in just a few weeks that will become policy and law in the United States, this mad economic strategy that he has for the United States. And so we've seen that today. We also saw now that Elon Musk decided he didn't like the budget deal with the Republicans that the Republicans had struck with the Democrats in the House. And today, the budget deal that, the government's going to shut down Friday night at midnight, it looks like that's going to happen now because Elon Musk decided that he didn't like the deal and he killed the deal. A guy who believes he's going to come in here in a few weeks and reform government, the very first act that he's taken is to shut the government down, is not a very good sign. And there's now incredible internal infighting where Republicans have already come out today and said they weren't going to support Mike Johnson for Speaker. He's only got a 3-seat margin next year because we got so close in the House. We picked up a seat in the House. And we've seen today, just today, sort of unprecedented, incredible infighting inside the Republican Party, the dramatic weakening of the Speaker, even if he gets reelected now, where he now looks like he's less powerful than a private citizen, Elon Musk. And this big shit show that we knew was going to come on January 20th has come early. Where it looks like Donald Trump and Elon Musk want us to have a lump of coal for Christmas and not a joyous one, because we could be going into Christmas with the government shutdown. Elon has come out today saying we should pass no legislation until Donald Trump is president, meaning that he wants to keep the government shut down for over a month. I mean, this is crazy lunacy. And if part of what I have been arguing here to all of you is that Donald Trump wants to wreck the country by design, that his economic policies will undermine the global economic system that made us prosperous. His defense and strategies will undermine the Western alliance that's kept us safe. That his strategies towards our democracy and suing private citizens for doing a bad poll and intimidating the media will end American democracy that's kept us free. This guy is a wrecking ball, a Russian backed wrecking ball. And if there was any doubt about it, I think it's gone after today. Today was actually kind of a major day, amazingly, right? We all thought we were going to sort of sleepwalk into the holiday. But I think the honeymoon of the Republican Party after the election, the post-election honeymoon, ended today. And now the ugliness and the danger and the fear that we should all have about what happens when these guys gain power next year is manifest and in front of our eyes. It's not hypothetical. It's not theoretical, right? It's there. The markets reacted today to the Fed's decision, and this is Donald Trump's fault. And it was in this writing of the banks and the analysts today was the expectation that inflation could rise played a major role in what happened today. And what's happening is that the markets, the CEO, the American people are waking up now to what they just did. And we are entering a dangerous time. Shutting the government down, the idea that Elon Musk thinks it's a reasonable thing to shut the government of the United States down, for over a month to allow dear leader to come in and do whatever the hell he's going to do. It is arguably the most crazy thing that anybody has proposed in a position of authority in the United States in decades, right? And here we are. And we cannot look away. I mean, part of what I've talked about is that this period is going to be very, very hard for us. Bad things are going to happen to the United States, and we're going to feel powerless, right, to stop them. But we cannot look away. It's our obligation to go fight these guys. And it's why I've been pushing so hard our legislative leaders, our elected Democrats, to be loud now, to define them early, to not let them, like Houdini, get away with all this. We need to be in the information war, as do all of you, every day, as much as you can stomach and stand it, right? We are in the battle with Trump. It's here now. It's proximate. It's going on today. And we need to demand that our leaders are louder here and engaging them frontally and defining them to the American people and making sure there's no question about what it is that they're doing and the threat that they represent. It's why we're in this mess, that we didn't do a good enough job at explaining what the threat of Trump really meant. And so we need to learn from our mistakes and not replicate them. It's why, frankly, I'm posting so much and why I'm bringing so much content to you, because I do feel a little bit like we're not as fully engaged as a family against them as we need to be. And frankly, as we must be now, given what happened today. And then finally, I want to say, let me go through with you sort of my recommendations about, where we go from here. And I've started this series where I've been not just me talking to you or us chatting with each other, but I've been bringing in really smart people who are in the game to talk to you and to share with you their thoughts about what happened and what comes next. And I'm really proud of the quality of the series that I've been able to put together in a quick period of time. I've got a lot more events scheduled already through January. People who will be coming to join us. We're going to be very involved in paying attention to the chairs race and the other elections of the DNC, of the vice chairs and the other officers of the DNC. And in January, where there'll be, some of these are going to be very spirited campaigns that we're going to be able to follow together and learn together. And certainly it's going to create an opportunity for an ongoing and important debate about who we are and how we conduct our business and how we understand what we need to do. And so let me give you sort of my core takeaways from my memo that I sent to you a few weeks ago called It's Time for Reimagination, Reinvention, and Innovation. I look at this period, as I've been saying, as dark as it's going to be, and it is going to be dark, and it's going to be hard, and we're not going to win all the battles that we need to win. The battles that I have been promoting to us that we need to win, by the way, and I should have mentioned this, is that I think after what happened today and what happened with the Matt Gaetz, now that we know that Matt Gaetz's ethics report is going to be released, is that I think that the position of the unacceptable four, that I call it, have been weakened, and we have to fight even harder. And this is the area that I am recommending to all of you that between now and early February, we have these wins that we must have. We must celebrate. must take the wins when they come, celebrate them, build on them, create momentum, right? Show that we can defeat Donald Trump, that he's not all powerful, that he is just an old man behind the curtain. He is the Wizard of Oz. He's not, he's the man behind the curtain, not the wizard himself, right? And so these wins are important. The Matt Gaetz defeat was important. The ethics report coming out is important, but we need to make sure that Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth and Kash Patel and Robert Kennedy are defeated, right? They can't serve the United States for different reasons. They're all incredibly dangerous. Donald Trump made incredible mistakes by appointing them, by nominating them, and we need to defeat them, right, for the good of the country. This is a battle worth fighting. This is a discrete set of winnable battles that we can have. And being focused and shooting for early wins really matters in a time of opposition. We can't do everything, and things are going to happen that we're going to be unhappy with, right? But we've got to stay focused and keep our eyes on the prize of the things that matter. And I think Trump made mistakes with all four of these nominations for different reasons. And these candidates are vulnerable, and we have to keep going after them. I applauded Ed Markey today for his incredibly spirited Senator Markey attack on Robert Kennedy. He is waging a campaign. He's producing short videos for social media. He's going on television. He's giving speeches. He's producing YouTube videos. This guy is fighting, and he's fighting in the way that we need to fight now. I'm really proud of him. He needs to be joined by all of his colleagues in the House and the Senate, and we need to do everything we can together to defeat the unacceptable four in the coming weeks. But let me go through now my final set of just thoughts, and we'll get to questions. Is that number one? Look, it was a very close election, as we've discussed, and we had really important wins. I mean, it was less than 4,000 votes that cost us the House, and now we know that Trump only won by 1.5 points, and it was about 230,000 votes over 3 states. This was not a landslide. This was not a mandate. This was not a rout. This was a very close election, and we can be disappointed and frustrated and want to reinvent and reimagine while also recognizing that this was a close election and that our road back is not as big as some people have said. Number two, I think one of the most important things is that the majority that we had, remember, we had averaged 51% of the vote over 4 elections. Our best showing up until this election, our best showing in 4 elections since FDR's 4 elections in the 1930s and 1940s. We had a majority. We had 51%. We got that majority to a great degree by investing heavily in performance with Hispanics and young people. That's what took our non-majority coalition and made it into a majority coalition, into other things. But this was a critical piece of expanding our coalition. Well, that coalition unraveled in this election. We had a very poor performance with young people and Latinos in particular, and also with young men in particular, young African American men, also young Black men. And our coalition unraveled. But I want to say one thing that's very important is there again is a lot of imprecision about this part of the conversation. Even when you add in this election, we've averaged 50% of the vote over the last 5 elections. We haven't had a collapse. We are not in some terrible place, but we're in a place where the groups that we lost are growing and are big. Young people, or that we lost ground with, not lost, we lost ground with young people, Latinos, right? We have an urgency now to go reimagine a new coalition for us, not to go back and build the one that we built 20 years ago with Barack Obama in the 2006 election that we've been riding since that time, but we need to build a new one. And I think, again, like so much about what's going to happen, yes, it's a dark and difficult period, but also there's a time for incredible creativity and reimagination. And this issue of how we imagine a new coalition is really, really important. Third is that we need to have a big economic conversation in the party about why it is that we're not getting more credit for the strong economic performance now, not just of Joe Biden, but of the last 3 Democratic presidents. And the contrast between our continued strong performance in making the country better and the economy better, and them continuing to act like a wrecking ball in the economy, 3 consecutive recessions. We have to learn how to win this argument. It is just unacceptable that since 1989, there have been 52 million jobs created in America. 50 million of them have been created under Democratic presidents. 3 consecutive Democratic presidents had very strong job growth, rising wages, lower deficits. 3 consecutive Republican presidents have had recession, higher deficits, American decline. We shouldn't be losing the economic argument to these guys. And we have to have a big debate about why that is. I think part of what I focus on, the line I use, is that we have to get on the right side of opportunity. I think a lot of what happened with young people and Latinos is they saw Trump, a wealthy business guy, they saw Elon Musk, they saw other successful people, and that rather than looking them as oligarchs, right, they saw them as people they want to emulate and to be connected with because it means they can feed their families and make more money and have more opportunity in their lives. We've got to have a big conversation around this. I think there's an enormous amount of bullshit, frankly, in the family around these issues. And we have to, this is to me kind of an existential battle for us because we have dramatically underperformed on our ability to claim credit for the good works that we've done over a very long period of time. And it's caused us harm, political harm. I think it was another major contributor to our disappointing election. For something that we've talked about tonight extensively, we've got to get louder. We got to create a 24/7, 365 political movement. Some ways Democrats still think there's a time for governing and a time for politics. Their politics 24/7, 365. We have to move and become that. To me, this is sort of the big transformation that has to happen in the culture of the center left, the Democratic Party, the pro-democracy movement. We've got to be louder. We have to view our supporters, all of you, as partners in the fight and not donors to the cause, and bring you into this fight in a far more respectful and compelling manner. 6 million people, 6 million people gave to the Harris campaign this cycle. All of you have the capacity to also be amplifiers and be sharing ads and making the case for our candidates and our party far. If we invest in you and help you become more educated and capable of being information warriors, it's part of the reason I founded Hopium, right? And we can do much more. Fifth is we need a big agenda for renewal and reform, anti-corruption. And sixth, while we focus on kitchen table issues, right, which we have to do, we also cannot leave behind the incredible power of Kamala's language around freedom and opportunity, love of country and patriotism. That feeling we had during the Democratic Convention, which was a convention that was really grounded in love of country and patriotism, to me, that was almost the best week, the best Democratic Party that I've ever seen. We can do both. We can be both a kitchen table party and passionate warriors for democracy, freedom, opportunity, and particularly reproductive freedom, right? We cannot create an understanding of our mission that does not make protecting the women of the United States and reproductive freedom central to everything that we do, given the attack on the rights and freedoms of women in America. We've got to be careful about this. And there's been, again, a lot of early half-baked hot takes, as I call them. But as we go to a place of learning more, right, we about what we need to do, those are some thoughts that I have. So just to recap, thank you all. Happy holidays. Two, the chaos and the wrecking ball is here already. It's not coming on January 20th. It arrived today. And we have to be clear-eyed about this and be able to start communicating who they are and what they want to do to the country or what they're already doing to the country uh, in a clear and concise and aggressive fashion. And our leaders need to be much louder than they've been so far. I don't really understand about why we're not seeing more people like what Ed Markey's doing. But we've got to be aggressive now in defining to the American people and making sure they understand that your interest rates aren't going to get cut because of Donald Trump next year, and that the stock market is going down because of Donald Trump, right? And that your 401k is taking a huge hit because of Donald Trump, not because of Joe Biden. They're going to blame all this stuff on us unless we get out and define it in this coming weeks. And then finally, I do think we're entering a period inside the family, a period of enormous opportunity and reinvention and reimagination that can be exciting and interesting and compelling when you're out of power and the opposition. It forces you to try new things, to shed old clothes, to help, as I wrote today, help old dogs learn new tricks, right? And new dogs learn new tricks too. We've got to go build this next thing together. And that's going to be a lot of what we're going to do here at Hopium, right? Over the next 2 years is to sort of experiment, to test. Hopium's like a lab, right? It's like a sketch pad. We're trying new stuff out all the time. We're listening to new ideas, and people take away from it what they want. But certainly, this is a time where we've got to be very open as a family to ideas, new strategies, new leaders, new arguments about where we go together. And so I think this is a period, despite all the darkness, this can be a very rewarding and exciting and interesting period. And I just can't tell you how proud I am to be in this fight with all of you every day. So thanks, everybody. Those are my thoughts. And let me go to questions and also, we have put, if you've got a question, go to the Q&A section. I'll try to get to it. And let me see if I can just get a sense of where people's heads are at. You know, the a lot of really, really interesting questions here. And let me try to summarize. Let me try to sort of go into what I feel like is the sort of the through line of all this stuff. Um, I'm not gonna um I don't have an opinion about the AOC Jerry Connolly fight today. I know I mean these kinds of battles inside of Congress are very complicated and I do think that what I loved about how AOC handled this today was that she's like, look, it didn't happen this time, but it's going to come. And, she certainly worked very hard for the ticket in 2024. And I think she is, showed herself. She paid some dues, right, for the family as a young leader and a young, capable, powerful leader. And I would just encourage all of you to not I know I'm going to sound like a Washington insider who's been here too long, but these kinds of inter-party fights are very complicated and are opaque and go back to, various things that none of us can see. And I just wouldn't if you were an AOC fan, I just wouldn't let you get it down. She's not going anywhere. She's still going to be on the committee. She's going to be a powerful voice, and she didn't become chair, but that doesn't mean she's not going to be a major leader for us. I mean, and she also made it very clear that she knows that she's got time and she's going to keep working. And so I don't overthink this. I mean, look, we are not in a perfect place right now. The family has taken a big hit. This was a very disappointing election. And I just want to counsel all of you that again, things are going to happen that you're not going to be happy about. And you can choose to dwell and spend all of your time there, or to work through that and get back to places, where you are happier and places where you're spending your time in a more productive fashion. It's just reality that we're out of power. It's reality that we are going to have fewer wins than we all want, and that bad things are going to happen. And we just have to get ready for that. And if we freak out about that every day and decide that we're going to wage a campaign against the 22 Democrats who didn't vote for us, we're going to get our fucking asses kicked if that's the way that we approach all this, right? We have to be grown-ups here, and recognize that they're in power and we're not. And, that we have to be very smart about how we get our wins and not get spread too thin, not waste our times in unproductive places. We don't really have that luxury. And it's why when I try to give you things to do, I try to make them manageable and achievable, right? A lot of the things that I try to give to you, whether it's the campaigns that we work on, or the parties that we support, are things where we can have wins, right? Where if we invest the money and time, they're winnable. I'm not into we won a lot of the stuff that we fought on this cycle, going all the way back to that Supreme Court race, because I picked things that were winnable and that weren't, sort of things because losing right now is a problem for us. If Trump keeps getting wins and we keep losing, right, then we're going to be digging a deeper hole. We need to be smart about getting wins, putting points on the board, celebrating the wins, and building on those wins going forward. If we decide we're going to fight every battle and every cabinet secretary, I mean, I've had people comment on Hopium like, we should be fighting why four, Simon? We should be fighting every them. Well, that's crazy, right? Like, we can't fight all these cabinet secretaries. A lot of these cabinet secretaries and these appointments he's made are people who are not crazy Republicans, right? They're sort of more traditional Republicans. We've got to focus on, we have limited power. We have to use it wisely. And yes, our leaders must be much more aggressive and be, in confronting him and pointing out to the American people what he's doing to all of us. I have been disappointed, as many of you have been, in the way that our leaders are handling this current moment. I don't totally understand it, to be honest. And I think that we are not necessarily learning the proper lesson from what just went wrong in the election, which that to me, the central reason we lost is we didn't define Trump. We didn't spend our money talking about the dangers of Trump. And we know this from the data, right? And from October 1st to October 21st, every ad that the Trump campaign ran was a negative ad against us. Only 5% of our ads were negative ads, and so this notion that Trump's negatives were baked into the cake, none of this stuff is true, right? All the stuff that's happening now, this is new information. The fact that the economy is starting to struggle because of Trump's economic proposals in a month from now, this is not something that's baked into the cake or people that know. And this is why we need to be aggressive, and why I'm going to continue, why Hopium hasn't really powered down. I mean, I've been out there every day giving you stuff to go chew on, to wrestle with. And I think over the next couple of days, we need to be particularly loud in how we talk about what he's doing. Yes, choose your battles, as Jane says. We've got to be very smart about this and disciplined. And we also have to, I just want to say this, we have to give a little bit of space to our leaders to understand how to recalibrate as the opposition party. We're no longer the governing party, we're the opposition party. And we're not going to be able to legislate. So we might as well be fighting really hard every day, on the things that matter to us. And we have to go into a sensibility and a mindset that's far more aggressive, guerrilla oriented, right? Where we're fighting the information war every day. We have the luxury now of not being able to legislate or govern. We're just in the opposition. And so the goal of our politicians should be to understand and accept responsibility of their place in the daily information war, and to become much louder and more aggressive in operating in a 24/7, 365 environment. I'm going to be unbelievably aggressive about making this case to all of my friends who are leaders of our party, that they have to transition their understanding of who they are and what their role is, and that they need to create a condition where we are loud and proud every day, where we're 24/7, 365, and that we need to go into these new media spaces far more aggressively than we've been. Some of you have asked about how we can be more supportive of this progressive media ecosystem that we all need to go build, that's now becoming a common talking point. I shared today on Hopium an event that I hosted in January of 2023, before I began Hopium, when I was still running NDN, my old organization. And it was an event that I did around this need to build pro-democracy media. And who spoke at it? Ben Misalis from Midas Touch, Tara McGowan from Courier Newsroom, Joe Trippi from Resolute Square, David Rothkopf from Deep State Radio. These are people that all of you have come to know through me at Hopium. And I even went so far to do a major collaboration with one of the most exciting and important parts of this new ecosystem, Courier Newsroom, through the entire general election, right? I went on Midas Touch every week. I go the general election with Tom Bonnier. I go on Resolute Square all the time and help to build them up. I probably did Deep State Radio at least twice a month for all of 2024. I don't know that there's anybody who's been out there promoting these new media organizations more aggressively than I've been over the last, year and a half. And I will continue to do so. And I'm really proud of that we were early on this argument about the need to invest and grow. And it was the whole reason, by the way, I want to say this is the whole reason I founded Hopium. I got so freaked out by the media complicity and the false red wave narrative in 2022 that I knew something was dangerous was happening in legacy media, that the legacy media that I had worked with over 30 years, that I had been part of as somebody who was a producer and writer for ABC News as a young guy, is that world had changed. And it was coward, it was intimidated, it was getting blown around by the right-wing noise machine. It was too easily becoming complicit in spreading right-wing untruths. And so I created Hopium as a piece of this new infrastructure. Hopium is fundamentally a media organization, right? And so, as are Heather Cox Richardson and others who are using Substack as their primary way of communicating. And so I do think that on this question of how we can do more, one of the things that's come up is whether or not we can create an investment fund here, like we invest in state parties and in candidates, in new media institutions. Well, by supporting being a paid subscriber to Hopium, right, you are investing in building what I think is one of the more consequential parts of this new media infrastructure, Hopium Chronicles, right, which has become, we have 165,000 now people in our community. We've grown from a very small number to a meaningful number, and we're continuing to grow even after this tough election. And so we're going to be, this is a central thing that we have been promoting here, that I promoted previously prior to even starting Hopium. But this is the DNA of this place, right? That we need to be able to have tools to tell our story more effectively, right? I mean, the three things that I put when I founded Hopium, right, is defeat MAGA, tell our story, more effectively, and then I forget the third now. I'm forgetting my own my own thing. Somebody will remember it. But and I think that in terms of, the questions that some of you are having about the best use of your time, right? Oh, and yeah, I mean, here's a question. Should we recruit? Look, there are large gatherings of the very wealthy donors in our family, and I think that those wealthy donors, there's an organization called the Democracy Alliance, and I'll share this article in Hopium tomorrow, that I helped create 20 years ago to invest in building out progressive infrastructure to match what had been built on the right. I hope that I'm no longer involved in that organization for a variety of reasons, but I hope that the leaders of that organization reflect upon the fact that the conversation we're now having about us having inadequate infrastructure to both, as we discussed with Jane and with Kleb and with Ben Wickler and with Ken Martin and with Anderson Clayton, we've discussed the need to invest in our party infrastructure, which I think has been grossly underinvested in over a long period of time. The party infrastructure, to me, is the most important part of our whole family. And we need that to be strong and robust and capable. It's a reason why I've been sharing these interviews with you, and I've been so involved in this discussion. I ran for party chair 20 years ago. I lost in the final weekend to Howard Dean by one vote. I became very close to becoming national party chairman. These are things that matter to me. I'm a party guy, and I believe that we need the strongest and most important part of our family to be as capable and big and robust and powerful as possible. I mean, one of the things that Jane said in the interview I did with her that I didn't know is that only 10 of the 50 state chairs, Democratic chairs, are paid. 40 of the 50 chair people of the Democratic Party in the United States are unpaid volunteers. How in the world can we expect to have a party that can operate at the level that we need in this time if we're operating on a volunteer basis of these state parties? We can fix this. $2.5 billion that we raised, for Kamala Harris and for Future Forward. We're talking about redirecting 10% of that into permanent infrastructure building in the state parties, in new media organizations, in order to fill this loudness and structural gap that we have with the right, and also to promote innovation and risk taking, and to recognize that we do have to reinvent, what we're doing. And this question about why it is that we wrote all these postcards and made all these calls and did all this door knocking and we did all these ads and they didn't do all that and they still beat us. These are questions that we have to air out, right? As a family, I think that we have to reinvent the basic project of how we go out and talk to people in America. This has been central to, frankly, what I've been arguing from the very first day of Hopium, right? Um, and um, and that we needed to use new tools and new ways of speaking to people. And the fact that, Future Forward, for example, had a model of advertising testing as the way that they engaged in communication rather than understanding the centrality of organic content and shared, viral content and shared media, was a big structural failure. And so those big donors in the Democratic Party, many of whom I've worked with over the years, and thankfully I am not dependent upon large donors. I don't have any large donors at Hopium. I have all of you, right? And it's a blessing in that regard because I feel it gives me freedom to do what I want to do. But I hope there is a lot of soul searching going on in the large donor community of the family about what has been perhaps a strategy that hasn't gotten us to where we need to be right now. Because what's amazing to me is we're having almost the same exact conversation that we were having 20 years ago when we founded the Democracy Alliance and created an institution that invests, has invested hundreds and hundreds, if not billions of dollars in progressive infrastructure, things like Center for American Progress and Media Matters and America Votes. But now we need a whole new set of institutions to grow and to flourish. And we need to do so in a way that isn't about command and control, but has got more of a VC kind of investment mentality and creating new capacities. And I hope there is some self-reflection to these large donors who've poured enormous amounts of money in to this family over the last 20 years. And here we are sitting feeling like we have inadequate, underinvested infrastructure. I mean, there were a group of people who set out to change that. And I don't know that they have done everything that we needed them to do. And so, but on a more optimistic note, I think that we're in a place where, um, you know, where I think a lot of really amazing things are going to happen because I do think that we are in a time where we're not as dependent upon a handful of large donors, that we have all of you, the money that all of you are giving around the country, 5, 6 million donors, that you guys can choose where to invest your dough. And certainly, is there a strategy here that we start investing in new institutional capacity in addition to the candidates and the party committees that we've been investing in? Yeah, I'm open to that. I mean, that's been suggested by some of our folks here. I don't want any less money to go into Hopium. In fact, I need a little bit more money next year than I had this year to sort of professionalize the site, and I don't want to lose track of that. But I think we've been very generous. I mean, 85% of the money that we've raised here has not gone into Hopium, but gone into other places, right? And I don't know if there are many organizations that operate that way, where, they're spending so much of their time raising money and building capacity in other places other than the place that they hang out in. But I think it's what we need to do, right? That's my job with all of you, is to give you a more meaningful connection to this political system that we have so that you feel your time and your money are spent as best as possible. I think we did a good job at that this last cycle. It may require us to think differently about how we do that this time. But I want to be very clear. If you've been an active Hopium member, you have met many of the most important entrepreneurs building this next thing here over the last 18 months and 20 months or whatever it is that since we've been here. Those friends of ours, Joe Trippi and Rick Wilson and Stuart Stevens and Tara McGowan and, the Mysalis brothers and all this, they have been an integral part of everything we've been doing here. And I'm really proud of that. And I have this view about life in general that the best things that ever happen are done through informal networks. The most successful projects are informal, not formal. And what I call rump groups is what we call them. And there has been a informal group. I talk to Ben Mysalis and all the time, right? We're in constant contact. I'm in constant contact with Tara, right? I'm in Joe Trippi and I are in daily contact. I mean, I work with all these guys all the time, sharing ideas, coming up with new strategies, sharing content that we think will be helpful to them. There's already an informal network of us that are collaborating together. And to be clear, we had a formal collaboration, right, with Courier Newsroom over the last 3 months of the election, where we produced content that was geared towards audiences that I don't reach, that were heavily Instagram and TikTok based. And so we are trying to innovate here. I'm really proud of that, right? And it may not be as evident from where you sit, but my God, am I trying very hard to make sure this new world, that all these new tools that we have are used and deployed in the most effective ways, right, for all of us. Let me go to a few more questions, and we're going to wrap up here in a minute. Oh, by the way, shame on Simon, right? Among the other innovative institutions we've been collaborating with are groups like Markers for Democracy, right? And Grassroots Democrats HQ, and the dozens and dozens. I mean, I don't know if people are aware of this, but I'm willing to bet that since the summer of 2022, I've probably given at least 150 presentations to Democratic grassroots groups around the country. I'm willing to bet that I've spoken to more groups for free, by the way. I mean, this is all just me doing this from this room, 7 o'clock at night, sometimes later on the West Coast. I don't know if there's anybody in the family that has done more to promote these indivisibles, these all these grassroots organizations around the country than I have over the last 2.5 years. And that's another part of our infrastructure that I have tried really hard to build up. It's very decentralized, right? Many of you are part of these groups. I've been focused a little bit more on the party recently and the parties than I was previously because the campaign came. But let's be very clear. This community of Hopium is also deeply attached and connected to and organically created with this whole new democratic grassroots movement around the United States. And that's still going to be very central to everything I did. I mean, the event I did in Los Angeles was with a group called Grassroots Democrats HQ. They have a physical headquarters, right? This was not an organization affiliated with the party in California. I mean, they're an independent group, entrepreneurial, effective group. I've spoken to so many others, right? I'll continue to do that. I need to do a little bit less of that than I did over the last 2.5 years because it means giving up my evenings and also I'm doing much more television and it just gets my schedule's getting a little crowded and there's only so much Simon every day, that I can that I can speak in these kinds of events without getting a little tired. I'm not a young guy anymore. But I'm going to continue to do what I can to support this new muscular democratic grassroots that's been so central and important to everything that we've been about here at Hopium and that been central to our victories all across the country and will be central to the victories to come. I think one of my favorite things I get to do is the Friday Power Lunch, for example. And all of you know that we ran a collaboration again with Postcards for Virginia, Markers for Democracy, at Grassroots Democrats HQ and the DCCC, where we made tens of thousands of phone calls and wrote hundreds of thousands of postcards into these battleground House districts that many of which we just won. That was also another Hopium collaboration with outside new groups that are putting points on the board and are meaningful. So I'm very proud of even though I'm just one guy here, right? Part of it is that I know that when I work with and collaborate with others, then our network becomes that much more powerful and impactful. And we're going to continue to operate that way, as we go forward. Let me just look and see if I can get one more. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ideas floating here in the questions about how we get, more louder and more effective. I think the way to think about this, and what I just want to end with is this. My advice to all of you is that we are in a period of reimagination and reinvention. We're building a new thing. And we have to approach this with a spirit of of respect and recognizing there is no clear path. There is no one way. There is no thing we must do. There's a big conversation we must have to have, right? There are things we have to try and things that we have to try and experiment with. And there are going to be things that are going to work and there are things that are going to fail. There are going to be leaders who are going to rise. There are going to be leaders that are going to disappoint. All of this is going to happen. And my advice is that if you are living and dying on a daily basis based on how our family performs on a single day as opposed to over time, you're going to have a really hard time over the next 6 months. You're going to have a lot of reasons to be really disappointed and to disengage. And my advice to you is you can't approach what's about to happen that way. We are out of power. We're going to get our ass kicked on a lot of stuff, but we got to focus on having wins and building new capacities and new strength and reinventing and building this next thing together. It's a different mindset, right? I've been through this before. 20 years ago when we built the Democracy Alliance and built all these other organizations, George Bush had just won re-election. He had gotten the popular vote and won the electoral college. They had the trifecta in the House and Senate, and we were really out of power at that point. And there was despair and freak out, and George Bush tried to cut Social Security and Medicare and made a bunch of the Iraq War went south. He ran into troubles around immigration. And we had an amazing midterm elections in 2006, which created the predicate for our big victory with Barack Obama in 2008. And so, yes, we can innovate through all of this. Yes, Donald Trump is scarier and more illiberal than Bush was, and so on. But the point I just want to say is, from a cultural standpoint, ask more questions than have answers. Be in debates. Don't be, um, don't dictate, right? Have understandings that we don't really know how to proceed here. We weren't really expecting to lose this election the way that we did. And that there are going to be days when we're going to be really happy with our team, and there are going to be days where we're going to be unhappy with them. And you can choose to live in the unhappy, or you can be a pragmatist and recognize that this is going to be really hard, and that we need to support each other, and that we need to be forgiving of one another, that we're not going to get it right every day. But what we can't be essentially forgiving about is people not leaving it all on the playing field every day. And that's where I think the things that we've been doing, for example, where we've been asking Joe Biden to do something that we know he's not going to do, but I still think it's important that we're trying, because we're learning new tactics and techniques. We're asking the president to go submit to the Congress, I mean, to the FBI, and begin the background checks for the unacceptable four or whatever group. We've asked you, many of you have been calling your members of Congress. Some of you have been calling them every day and asking them to make sure they're fighting the unacceptable four. I think now we need to be calling them, and I'm going to do this tomorrow. We need to be calling them and demand that they not only fight the unacceptable four, but that they fight this Elon Musk government shutdown, and attack on our economy and on our political system that's going to come, and that we expect our politicians not to go home, but to fight it out, get the government opened, right, and be in this battle, right? You should develop a relationship with your House and Senate members, recognizing that you calling others that are not part of that are not yours is of limited utility. But you should become even a daily caller and letting them know about how you feel about how they're doing, right? Give them feedback. These calls really matter in these offices. They really track this stuff. This really affects their understanding about how things are playing back in the district or in the state that they represent. There's much more we can do, and I will help use this experience that I have of having, been here for far too long in Washington now, 32 years full time working in this business, to help give you insights on how to make your time more effective. But my plea here is for us not to descend into factionalism. We will lose if we fight with one another. And so, even though you may be really pissed off today at the Democrats for passing over AOC and putting in Jerry Connolly, you can't it can't become definitional to you, to your understanding of what's going to happen, because you can either decide to be perpetually disappointed in everything that's about to happen, or you can be a pragmatist and help lift us up when we get knocked down, where you can bring the spirit of hopium, right? The sense of optimism, this can-do spirit that we have here, to our politics every day. And I think that one of the things that I'll just say is that on Blue Sky, where we all are hoping and investing in building a new community outside of Twitter, some of the early kind of sentiment that has been, I think, misplaced. There is a lot of anger and frustration and attacking of people that is, as I like to say, and as I wrote today, we cannot let Donald Trump's darkness become our own. We have to stay in the light. We cannot become a negative sentiment, our version of his negative sentiment machine, because then we become a version of MAGA. We become blue MAGA, right? And that part of the core understanding of Hopium is that their strategy is to put negative sentiment out into the world, to make people feel bad about our country, our leaders, our institutions, and each other. And we respond and beat MAGA by being conscious about the sentiment we put out into the world, and not to replicate that negative sentiment machine with a version of it of our own. I do believe that one of MAGA's central strategies is to flood the zone every day with negative sentiment and challenge us to join them in that negative sentiment, in that disregard and disrespect for one another, for our institutions and our leaders. And so we have to be able to recognize now that we're in a coalition that's taken a loss, that we are battered and beaten. and that we need to be gentle and respectful with one another as we go forward. Because this is not about any one politician or any one battle. This is about a much bigger war that we're not winning right now in the way that we want to be. And we have to now regroup and get stronger and make smart investments and pick the wins that and have the wins that matter and honor them, celebrate them, build on them. Because what they want is they want us to keep losing and for people to give up, to give up. They want us to obey in advance. They want us to feel that what dictators and authoritarians want is they want you to give up. And we can't do that. But giving up is also going to be giving up. A form of giving up is giving into factional fighting or giving into this kind of impulse. And one of the things I wrote about in Hopium today is this kind of impulsive, reflexive, what I would argue self-indulgent, oftentimes, kind of deep attack on somebody before you really know what you're talking about. Just don't do it, right? Hold your tongue. Be smart, be disciplined about how you engage in the sentiment you put out into the world. I'm not asking you to disengage. I'm not asking you to be Pollyannish. I'm not asking you to be a sap, right? I'm asking you to be strategic and smart. And managing sentiment is part of a skill set we have to learn. They have an entire theory about sentiment. We don't. We need to develop it, right? Part of the winning the information war is understanding that managing sentiment is part of that. The people that are arguing that we're going to win this battle with them through anger and so on, I don't buy that, right? I just don't buy that. I don't know that may be the case, right? Kind of our version of angry populism, right? I don't know about that. I'm not convinced of that. I have a different view about this. And I think that part of the way that we defeat MAGA is by creating hope and optimism and a belief in tomorrow, denigrating them, degrading them, defining them, being ruthless about that, but also being optimists. I mean, liberalism at its core is a deeply optimistic and hopeful faith. And we cannot, I think, for a moment lose sight of that part of our project, right? That we can be steely eyed and battle with them and do what we need to do in a rough and tumble way. But at the end of the day, we have to, at some point, get to a place where we're proposing, not just opposing, where we create a vision for where we're going together. We don't have to do that now. That can come, that can be by the fall, right? And we can debate and deliberate together. But we have to be smart now about what we do. We don't have as much power as we had, and we have to use the power that we do have wisely in a very sophisticated manner. But we also, I think, what is non-negotiable is that we have to be loud 24/7, 365. This is a new thing we have to learn. And it's going to be, for some people, it's going to come natural. For AOC, for Jasmine Crockett, right? For Maxwell Frost, for Eric Swalwell, for Jamie Raskin, right? For Lawrence O'Donnell. There are people where this stuff comes naturally. There are a lot of other of our leaders that are going to have to learn how to do this. We have to help them, right? We can't be angry at them and chastise them. We have to encourage rather than be angry, in my view. And because we have old dogs have to learn new tricks, and we have to help them do that. That's what we're going to be doing here at Hopium, right? So love you guys. Have a happy holidays. I just want to say thank you again. This has been so deeply rewarding to me personally every day being in this community with all of you. This is, I love the work that we do together. I enjoy my work every day. I feel like I'm making a difference. And that's only possible because of all of you, right? I wouldn't be here being able to do all this without your paid subscriber, your financial support. So thank you all. And, chins up. Let's keep fighting. It's going to be rough, but we're in this battle for all the right reasons, everybody. And we got to take the wins when they come, celebrate them, and build on them so that by next year, right, we kick their ass in the midterms like we did in 2006. Take care, everybody. Happy holidays.